You may have missed it, but in the last week, Britain had a series of local elections. Now, because of the complex way that British local elections work, these took place mostly in Scotland and Wales, with only parts of England taking place. Needless to say, the Conservative Party got annihilated in these elections. Overall, they lost 487 council seats, where the Labour Party gained only 108. The Liberal Democrats gained 222, the Green Party gained 87, and the Scottish National Party gained 22. A number of minor parties gained a few seats, as well as 17 independent candidates. The remarkable story here is not really that the Conservatives got badly mauled, but that Labour failed to capitalise on this profound political weakness. The Liberal Democrats are infamous for their good local ground game, and the Greens have clearly been following that playbook. These two left-wing parties really won big, and that's the point. Out of the 7 political parties that won double-digit number of seats or greater in this election, 6 of them are either left-wing or radically left-wing. The Conservatives are the only party who are at least nominally right-wing, with Nigel Farage's Reform UK, the retooled Brexit party, winning only 2 council seats this year. Out of an overall 19,481 seats in Great Britain, the Conservatives control 7,408, which we can make 7,410 if we add Reform seats, and the major left-wing parties control 9,253 seats, with 2,820 being independent or vacant. It didn't come as a surprise to anyone that the Conservatives took this beating either. Since the coronavirus pandemic, the entire Westminster bubble has been mired in pointless, enervating, small-minded political scandals such as Partygate or Beergate, in which the leaders of the 2 major parties have been relentlessly hounded by the media for breaking lockdown rules. The simplest way out of this would be to admit that the lockdowns were a mistake and to pardon anyone who had been punished for breaking them. Instead, the Conservatives are stuck in a political tar pit and seem unable to figure out how to escape. How are the Conservatives mishandling their own political position so poorly? Boris, you may recall, absolutely smashed the opposition in 2019. He won over the Labour heartlands, who recognised that the Labour Party no longer represented the interests of the indigenous working class of this country, and instead carried the flag for Islam, immigrants and intersectionality. For the patriots of this country, it seems that the only serious choice we have is the bloody Conservative Party. And in 2019, it seemed to have a purpose. Boris was going to get Brexit done and put the country back on its right footing for the future. Now that Brexit appears to be basically resolved, although there are still a few loose ends that need tying up, such as the Northern Ireland border and the status of Gibraltar, the Conservatives are at a loss to know what they're supposed to be doing. It seems that Boris's Conservative Party didn't really understand what the Brexit vote was actually about. I think that, underlying the desire to have Britain independent of the European Union, is the promise to make Britain British again. People were voting to leave the European Union, which Britain joined in 1972 when it was called the European Communities. Since then, much has changed, and not for the better. The demands for ever closer union and the submission of more powers to Brussels had convinced the majority of the voting public that, in fact, the situation was not as it should be, and Britain should leave before things got worse, which they are. Apparently, the EU is now moving to end the national veto that each country had, centralising even more power in their unelected governors. Brexit is more heavily vindicated with each passing day, it seems. One of the hallmarks of Tony Blair's tenure in government was to attempt to remodel Britain into a more European state. As we can see, in his 1998 Human Rights Act, the 2003 Communications Act, the devolved parliaments, the Supreme Court, the open borders policy, these and other changes seem designed to Europeanise Britain in order to put it in line with the EU's goal of becoming the United States of Europe. It was this project that the British electorate rejected wholesale when they decided to vote for Brexit. To leave this project is a fundamentally radical position, that the Blairite Westminster Consensus thought was not something the public would realistically vote for, but they did. Since Boris and his Conservative Party decided to back the Brexit vote so firmly, they took on this radical position as their own, and so now should follow it through. We can see that the Britishization of Britain is unsurprisingly a very popular project with the British people. Take, for example, Priti Patel's plan to deal with the illegal English Channel crossings. Instead of following the left-wing European model of putting them up in hotels at our expense, Priti Patel is instead planning to deport them to Rwanda for processing. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. What you can do, deport them to Rwanda? No. Priti Patel is planning to deport them to Rwanda for processing. This is not a plan the migrants themselves like, and so the retarding effect of this alone is already paying dividends. But more than that, the public are behind this plan. According to a poll by Savanta, 47% of people either strongly or somewhat support the Rwanda plan, with only 25.7% either somewhat or strongly opposing it. This is a clear win for the Conservatives, and it's because it works in favour of the United Kingdom and not against it. Needless to say, the lefty human rights lawyers that Boris has publicly spoken out against are already preparing to file their papers in order to scupper the system, and they're going to use Blair's 1998 Human Rights Act to do it. Boris has the parliamentary numbers to simply repeal the act and replace it with something that these insufferable lawyers can't use to undermine the territorial integrity of Britain. Why not do it? It was even mentioned in the Conservatives' latest manifesto. What is stopping them? Why not go further on this and continue winning over the public? According to the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford, 44% of people want legal migration to be actively reduced, whereas only 17% of people want it to be increased. Another policy win would be simply to refuse visas for settlement in the United Kingdom. Nothing on the ground would immediately change, but the course of the country would be altered in a direction that people actually want. Next up, why does the Conservative Party even accept the Blairite paradigm at all? Why should there be a Supreme Court? This foreign institution appears to have failed to find a proper role for itself in public life, and actively attempted to overturn the results of the Brexit referendum. The Brexiteer Conservative Party should simply abolish it. We've never needed it before, and it's become a hindrance in the government's ability to execute the will of the British public. Get rid of it. What good have the devolved parliaments been, in real terms? They appear to have contributed to the degradation of the stability of the British state. They are breeding grounds of secessionism, as the constant banging of the drum for Scottish independence from the SNP has demonstrated. Even after losing the independence referendum in 2014, Nicola Sturgeon still won't let the issue go. Her most recent proposal of another referendum on the issue in 2023 was met with 60% opposition from her own countrymen, with only 29% in favour. Getting rid of the devolved parliaments will improve the political stability of this country. Instead of being mired in the political paradigm of Tony Blair, why not embrace the radical conservatism the British public voted for both in 2016 and in 2019? Instead of being constantly beaten over the head with the latest ism from the Labour Party and their affiliated media in a desperate attempt to undo the will of the British people, why not start taking positive strides toward victory? The decisions the Conservative Party makes sets the agenda. If you take a step forward, they have to follow, because you are the executive power of this country. They have no choice in this matter. It is only when the Conservatives are at rest that the left can surround and chew away at you. Boris's Conservatives are like Gulliver in Lilliput, pinned to the ground by tiny ropes that they could break at any moment if only they chose to do so. Shake off the torpor of uncertainty and start thinking differently. What can you do to make Britain a better place for the British? That's where your responsibilities lay, and the answers have been given to you by the polling. The lefty tossers in the opposition will howl, and that's a good thing, because you know what makes them cheer. The public will be behind you, and will happily vote for a party that is actively making their country more British. And if the Conservatives don't start actually doing something positive, then they run the risk of presiding over yet another stagnant period of governance, such as the walking corpse that was the John Major government. Not only will they be ill-remembered by the public, they will play the heel for yet another staggering Labour Party victory. History will likely not remember it kindly that Boris's Conservative Party, while holding all the cards, managed to completely misplay their hand.